All right. So, what the heck was that? Okay. So we were talking about the Clement Exchange, and it was an exchange of what? You said disease and goods between who and who? So that's the problem with the definition. It's between what and what? Not Africa was not involved in this situation. New World, Old World. New World was Europe. Old World was actually no. Flip no. New World was Americas. Old World was Europe. All right. They exchanged goods, services, animals, disease, and so forth. Right? Who won? Old World or New World? Old World won. Yeah, trust me. Yeah. They got diseases, but not as much as the Native Americans did. All right. What was the Great Awakening?
New form of religion.
It was based on religion. It's religious, yes, but say it again. Say it again. They were excited about religion again. In America, in the 1730s, the British colonists began to become more excited about religion. Middle Passage. What was the Middle Passage? Transportation of slaves from West Africa to the Americas. Majority of slaves went to South America and the Caribbean. 5% of slaves went to America, North America. 5%. European Enlightenment. What was that? European Enlightenment.
Like the Reformation of the church.
Thank you. Like when people began to look at the world in a different lens, where people began to question authority. If they can question God, you can question your king. So it's a different view on authority. This all helped transform America into what we know as it today. Like I don't have that flag in my room, or my state flag in the room, or any of these flags in the room, if it wasn't for the Enlightenment period, the Great Awakening, the Clement Exchange, or the Middle Passage. Seriously, it might. I mean, to be honest, it could be. It could have been. Yeah, it could have been. Now, Native Americans, what did they do when the Europeans came? What's the general kind of situation for Native Americans when Europeans begin to come to America? Some of them do suffer, yeah.
Welcome them.
Some of them are going to welcome, exactly, yep. You know, they see these ships and they're like, wow, these white-faced men, or they seem to be very powerful people, so yeah. Some of them do welcome them, yeah. Sorry for a second. So, what do they? So overall, the Native Americans have to do what to survive? Some of them do fight back, but remember, initially when they get there, like the Europeans have weapons, whereas the Native Americans don't really have the. Yeah, they really don't have the technology just yet. So initially, what do Native Americans do? Say it again. They kind of give up. Yeah, they kind of relinquish land. They kind of like give up their land. They try to adapt to these new Europeans. They try to adapt. They try to maintain their, selves, but at the same time kind of adapting to these new Europeans. So, what was the most dramatic situation that would happen in the New World? When you think about Native Americans and the Europeans, what was kind of the most dramatic thing that happens? Disease. Yeah, disease. Like, disease is going to dramatically change North America. Columbus goes in 1492. He goes back a couple years later. 90% of the people are dead. That's dramatic. Forget about the battles and the wars and everything that the Native Americans fought against the Europeans. Disease did more damage than any other battle ever did in North America. When you think about Native American society versus European society, what would someone who came from planet Mars say? Who didn't know these people. They came down from planet Mars, they landed on Earth, and they said, wow, Native Americans, wow, Europeans. What would you see if you landed on planet Earth in 1500? And you saw Europe and you saw North America. How different was it? Exactly, there you go. Like, you would come down from planet whatever, and you say, wow, Europe, it has a lot more, when it comes to society than Native Americans do. Even though that doesn't mean that Native Americans are lesser than Europeans, but Europeans thought that though. When Europeans came to North America, they're like, wow, these people are uncivilized. Even though Native American society actually was quite civilized. It's just one difference was technology. That's the major difference, was technology. All right, Jamestown. What did Native Americans do? Now, Jamestown was the somewhat first successful English settlement in North America. What did Native Americans do in Jamestown? There was some help given. Overall, what happens between Native Americans and people in Jamestown? They fight. They fight in Jamestown. Now, Jamestown eventually is going to grow as a colony. What is going to help Jamestown grow as a colony? Tobacco. That's definitely the major reason why it grows. It grows as a colony. Who helps grows tobacco? African slaves. You have to know that. Eventually, over time, African slaves will be the cheap labor source in the colonies. They will help grow tobacco in Jamestown, and Virginia, for that matter. When you compare New England to Virginia colonies, what major differences can we talk about? Explain what that means. That's good, but yeah. So, New England, very rocky. Virginia, very fertile. What else?
Family.
Family where?
North.
In the north, not so many families in the south. Because the conditions were better for families in New England versus families in Virginia. Virginia it breeds disease, especially in the summertime. New England, cold winters, they killed the bacteria and diseases. Families went to New England, men went to Virginia. So those are differences you should know for the midterm. Did that already. Good. So, the Constitution, Hamilton versus Jefferson. What were the differences between Jefferson and Hamilton on the Constitution? Who and who?
Hamilton is pro-country.
Pro national government, yes. What about Jefferson? Pro state. Like, Hamilton saw the Constitution as creating a strong central government. Hamilton, yeah. Jefferson saw the Constitution as weakening the power of the states. You have to know that. Yes.
What is Jefferson?
He's a Democratic Republican.
Democratic.
He's an anti-federalist first, Democrat Republican next. Yeah, so you can say Dem-Republican.
Can we just say Republican?
You have to say Democrat Republican. You have to, because the Republican Party is different than Democrat Republican. That's why you have to say, if you're writing an essay on Jefferson and you say Republican Party, it's wrong. It's wrong. He's a Democrat Republican. Remember, we did that little. So, Federalists, anti-Federalists, and then what happens? The Federalist Party dies off. It becomes the Whigs. And it dies off and it becomes Republican. The anti-Federalists become the Dem Republicans, and then they drop the Republican and just become Democrats. I am a Democrat. If I was born in 1872, I would have been a Republican. Republican was the party that freed the slaves. I would have been a Republican actually, and I would be a Republican until the 1930s, when FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, said to everyone in the country, "I will help you with a job." He will help African Americans, women, and so I became a Democrat in the 1930s. So African Americans vote majority, like 90% of African Americans vote Democrat today. In 1890, we would have voted Republican. All right, so what was the Second Great Awakening? What was the Second Great Awakening?
Women participate in religion.
Okay. Women participated actually in the first one too, by the way. Say temperance. Okay, that's one reform. What else? Like Eric is actually ahead of the question, but that's good though. Temperance.
Art.
Yeah, that does happen. That happens, yeah. But that's not part of the effects of the Second Great Awakening. Education, that's two. So 1830, Second Great Awakening. What reforms come out of the Second Great Awakening? We just have two so far, right? Temperance and education. You're close. And anti-slavery, abolitionism, that's three. What else? Industry will happen eventually, but it's not part of the Second Great Awakening. The Second Great Awakening is religious in its foundation. Women's rights, good. Not suffrage so much, but rights. Women's rights. And there's one more. Prison reform. Prison reform is 5. So, Dorothy Dix was a woman who said, I want to check out the conditions of the prisons. She commits herself into an asylum, and she realized how shitty it is. Like, it's shitty. They treat people with mental illness the same as they treat criminals. And so because of her experience in the asylum, they changed the prisons for people with mental illness. Prison still exists for criminals, yes, but like people who are sick mentally shouldn't have to be in a prison. So they reformed because of that. Anyone remember who William Lloyd Garrison was?
What?
William Lloyd Garrison. Anyone remember who that was? That was that part of you had that for over the Chinese New Year. I made you read 2 chapters. That was part of those 2 chapters. William Lloyd Garrison. Remember who he was?
Click on him. What did he do? What did he do?
Anyone remember? That's what I'm asking. William Lloyd Garrison. Lloyd Garrison. He was an abolitionist. He was anti-slavery. He was a white man who actually produced a newspaper called Liberator that was talking about ending slavery. He was a radical abolitionist who wanted to end slavery right away. Who's Andrew Jackson? President, that's true, yeah. Anything else? War hero from what war?
War against Native Americans.
He did kill Native Americans. He did do that.
Canada.
You remember what war he became a war hero? It was the British were involved. That's true. Yeah. And remember the name of the war, though. Think about how many wars did the British fight the Americans? 1812. There you go. Yeah. The Battle of New Orleans. He becomes a war hero. Remember, the war is over, and he's still fighting because communications, of course, sucked in 1812. And so he wins a battle after the war's over. Actually, he's famous for a battle that happened after the war ends. But the American people love him. There's a famous picture of Andrew Jackson. Famous picture of Andrew Jackson. He's got the crown on. He's got the sepulchre. He's got the robe on. King Andrew the First. Why would people think he's a king in America when he's the president? Once again, this is part of the history that you did for Chinese New Year.
Dictatorship.
Say it again.
Dictatorship.
People think he's acting like a dictator, but why?
He choose people into the office.
Oh, yeah, spoil system, good. Part of the reason why he put his friends into the administration, which there's nothing wrong, by the way. If I became president of the United States, I would say, Jasmine, you can be my Secretary of State. Big J, you can be my Secretary of Treasury. Scarlett, you'll be my Secretary of Defense. I can pick anyone I want to. But the question is this: is Jasmine qualified as a Chinese national to be the Secretary of State
Yes.
in America? In America.
Yes.
I like Jasmine, but I don't think she's qualified to be Secretary of State. So Jackson picked his friends, who may not have been qualified. But if you win an election, you can do whatever you want to. Just ask Donald Trump. Just ask him. How many people has he picked who are now been fired over the last 4 or 5 months, right? Half his administration has been fired because they're not doing their job. Why? Because they're not qualified to do the job. What else, though? What else is he known for besides the spoil system?
No central bank.
He got rid of the central bank. What else?
Common man. Common man.
He's the president for the common people. That's true. That's a good thing, actually, not a bad thing. Why is he King James? King James. Wow. I'm thinking about NBA now. Why is he King Andrew? Ooh.
The planet of M37.
That's when he left office. He caused the panic to happen. Okay, Andrew Jackson. He is known for attacking Native Americans. The Trail of Tears, where he forces Native Americans off their homes in Georgia and makes them go to the Midwest. He attacks the Supreme Court. He attacks Congress. He is a dictator, just like you said. Many people view him as a dictator because of the Trail of Tears, the Indian Removal Act, the spoil system, also the force bill. Anyone? The force bill? Anyone? Force bill? South Carolina decided that they're going to not abide by the law that says that tariffs will be enforced. Jackson was opposed to the tariffs, but because South Carolina went behind his back to do this, he passes the force bill, which says, I'm going to force the military to impose tariffs if South Carolina does not do it themselves. So people began to see him as a dictator, as a king. Now, the common individual, the common men, they love him. People in Congress, people in the Supreme Court, they begin to hate him. They hate him so much that they form a new political party. The Whig Party was formed because of their hatred towards Andrew Jackson. There were people from the Democrat-Republican Party, from the Fellows Party, who joined forces because they hated Jackson so much. Oops. Stop. Okay. Mexican-American War. Why is that even important? Oh, wow, you guys actually, you're both right. Yes, Texas and slavery. Oh, you said Texas. You said slavery.
He says Texas.
I say
Oh.
slavery.
You said slavery. Yeah, actually, you're all right. You're all right. America will expand, and they will acquire Texas and also California. But why slavery? What's the issue with slavery, though?
Popular sovereignty.
Thank you so much. Popular sovereignty. The American people get to choose exactly slave or free state. As the country expands, the issue of slavery comes up again and again. Slave or free state? Okay, that's enough. Wow.